CIA versus KGB. This is a light card game by Fantasy Flight Games. The game came out a couple of years ago. I remember playing the first edition, owning a copy, liking it, and I don't know what happened to that copy. Must have gotten lost when I moved to my new house. I know that recently I acquired the game because I missed it and I wanted to play it. So what you see here is when you will see featured in my video is the latest edition of the game. I don't have the impression that there was any change in the rules, but I have played the old version quite some years ago, so I'm not 100% sure. I played it when it just came out. Two-player light card game with an espionage theme built around an engine that is based on blackjack, on the idea that players are drawing cards to try to get as close as possible to a certain target amount of points without exceeding it. And seems very abstract, but well, here the game has been tailored to the theme quite interestingly, because the game portrays the efforts of the CIA and the KGB during the Cold War to influence various areas of the world without making their influence too obvious, without messing things up so much that it would cause unrest in the region. So there are just ways in which sometimes themes and mechanics, even though they developed separately, I don't think that the CIA was like, oh, look at blackjack, that's how we should do espionage. The two things developed separately, and then somebody notices that there is a possible affinity, and it works in this game. I can already tell you, the game manages to pack an unsuspectable amount of theme in such an abstract engine and system of rules and mechanics. Let me show you how the game works and plays. You will use three types of cards in this game. One type represents the objectives. These are the cards that you're trying to score, the objectives that you're trying to control or to influence. They may represent countries, or you're trying to expand your influence, or special important events such as the Olympic Games, Nobel Prizes, things like that. Then you have groups. These are the groups that you're trying to influence in order to gain control of certain objectives. There are four types of groups. They're color-coded. They represent political groups, economic groups, media groups, and military groups. So they're color-coded. They have a numerical value, and there is also a specific effect that each type of group can perform. It's a specific effect that you can use when you're deploying that group. Also, you have 6 cards representing your spatial agents, I should say the officers. Actually, officers, how spies in the CIA refer to one another, not agents. These officers are available to you at the beginning of the game, all 6 of them. At the beginning of each turn, after you reveal an objective, and this is the objective that the players will be fighting for. Let's choose a country, just easier that way. After you reveal an objective, each player looks at their available officers, and they choose one secretly. There's different art, but the 2 decks of officers are exactly the same for CIA and KGB. This represents the officer that you decide that you want to send to the mission. Suppose, for example, that I decide to send this guy, my director, then secretly I place that on the table. So each player selects one of their officers secretly to send to the mission. You will reveal the officer that you chose at the end of the turn, at the end of the fight for that objective, and the officer that you selected will most likely affect things. But this happens later. Now let's talk about the struggle itself. During the struggle to take control of that objective, players need to keep in mind that total number of influence points that can be used in that area. The idea is that you're trying to get as close as possible to that number. You're trying to influence things as much as possible in that area without going over it, because if you pour too much influence into an area, then you cause social unrest. People are not pleased when the influence of the CIA or the KGB is too obvious in a region, and there is a steep negative penalty if you do that. If the number of influence points that you produce in an area is higher than the limit that you see printed on the objective card of the objective the players are trying to control. What happens in your turn? During your turn, you can do one of several things. You can simply draw a card from the group's deck and you place it in front of you. Or you can choose to use the special power, the special effect of a card that is in front of you, and in which case you turn the card by 90 degrees to indicate that you use that effect. The card is now spent, it cannot be used again unless you're using a game effect that allows you to refresh it. So when you turn it, you simply perform the effect, you resolve the effect, and that completes your turn. Another thing that you can do is to pass. A turn, a struggle for an objective is over when both players pass in a turn, which may happen because they choose to do so or because they are forced to do so. This is the maximum number of groups that you can recruit in a region. So if you already have 5 groups in front of you, you cannot recruit further groups. You cannot go above that number. As I said, you may happen to go above that number, but you do not want to. This is the number of influence points that a group produces. So, for example, if I have these groups in front of me, now I have 6 points, and I may choose, when it is my turn again, to use one of these effects to do something with these cards, or I may choose to draw another card, and this would be bad because it just put me over that number. Suppose that actually this is the card that I've drawn, now I would be in a good position because I'm fairly close to that 9, and I'm not over it. As you can see, this is blackjack pretty much. The idea is blackjack, but with a theme and with some extra mechanics, some extra game effects. So players go back and forth, drawing cards and producing effects from the cards, just to give you a sense of what the cards do. These cards allow you to steal a group from your opponent or to give him one of yours. This can be pretty good to affect the total number of influence points available to the players. You can mobilize means to spend. You can mobilize any ready group, forcing the opponent to waste one of their effects, or ready any mobilized group, refreshing one of your groups. You cannot affect an economic card with this power, that is, economic cards do not affect other economic cards. The effect is the same on all cards of a certain type. So all government cards have a certain effect, all economic cards have the same effect, and so on and so forth. The media allow you to look at the top card on the group deck, then recruit it, discard it, or leave it where it was. It's pretty good when you're getting close to the maximum number allowed, if you can have a look and say, yeah, no, this is really not a card that I want to recruit. Or maybe, whatever, there are various things. You can just pretend it's a bad card and you leave it there. You can recruit it also if it's a good card. Then there is another type of group, which is the military group, and that allows you to destroy cards. You can send any group card, whether ready or mobilized, to the discard pile. It can be pretty powerful because it can affect the number of influence points that the opponent has. It can also prevent the opponent from using effects that you don't want the opponent to use, because the military cards allow you to destroy a certain card before the opponent gets to use the effect. So what happens here? Players go back and forth until they both pass, or until one of them exceeds the total amount of points that is allowed in a certain region. The winner of the struggle is the player that gets the closest to the allowed number of influence points in the region without exceeding it. If you exceeded it, you cause unrest, and that is bad. If there's a tie, then you use these icons here as tiebreakers. It means that certain types of groups have a major or a larger influence in a region rather than others. And then you look at the first icon, and it is the tiebreaker, the player with the single highest amount in that category. For example, in this case, would be economics, gets the region. And then, if that is still a tie, then you look at the second icon, the third, and the fourth. The player that wins the struggle, that is the player that gets the closest to the total amount without exceeding it, scores the card. Not exactly, not yet. What you do is you have these two tokens, one per player. If you are the one that wins the struggle, then you place your token there. In most cases, this means that you are going to score the card. But why this extra step of placing the token there instead of just saying, well, I'm the one with the highest total, I win the struggle, and I score the card? Nope, why that extra step? Because of the card effects of the agent that you selected at the beginning of the turn, before the struggle started. As you can see, agents have one or two boxes here, and that indicates the type of effect that at the end of the struggle you implement when you reveal the card, depending on the token that is there. For example, if a CIE token is there and I reveal this card, then this is the agent that I chose at the beginning of the struggle. The effect is that I can terminate my opponent's Agent X. Agent X is the name of the agent that you sent to the mission. You can terminate your opponent's spy and put the objective face down on the bottom of the objective deck. Or if you committed this spy here and the token is not yours, then there's no effect. Some effects will happen no matter who has the token. For example, the analyst allows you to look at the top 3 cards of the group deck and place them in any order you may choose for the beginning of the next struggle. The double agents allows you to send an agent of the opponent on leave, which means that agent will not be available for the next turn. The deputy director is simply an agent that can never be terminated, so even if the opponent killed all of your agents with their assassin, you still have this one. The director is a super powerful card. It immediately allows you to claim the objective on the bottom of the objective deck. So if you have your token there, you resolve this, you can activate that effect, you get that objective card and the one at the bottom of the deck. But why is this thing really important instead of just saying you won the struggle? I think maybe because of the effect of this guy here, which pretty much reverses things. It means that if you place your token there, and this is the agent that you sent, your opponent claims the objective immediately. What? And if the opponent has their token there, you claim the objective immediately. So if you selected this guy at the beginning of your turn, you're trying to lose the struggle. But of course, you're trying not to make it look like that, not to let the opponent understand that you're trying to lose the struggle. Basically, you win the card if you lose the struggle because your opponent has their token there. If your token goes there, actually, you lose the struggle. It's completely counterintuitive. Simply imagine this. The opposite of what looks like there is what happens in reality. The player that has lost the struggle will actually get to score the card. After you resolve the effect coming from your agent, and actually another important thing is that the effects of the agents are resolved in order from lowest to highest. This is kind of important because the director, as we said, is a very powerful card, but the director has to survive until the end of that phase, because if the opponent played an assassin, the assassin resolves their effects before the director, then the assassin terminates the director, which means maybe use an effect to send the assassin of the opponent on leave. That is then when you play the director, things like that. After you resolved the effect of the agent goes on leave, which simply means it's not available for the next turn, and then next turn you will choose from the remaining agents that you have, and then you kind of like, not a good one, you kind of like cycle around. So the agent that was active goes on leave, the agent that was on leave goes back in your deck, and so on and so forth. After you resolve the effect, you gain the amount of points indicated in the bottom right corner of the objective that was scored. So Afghanistan is worth 15 victory points. Some cards indicating specific objectives, which are not regions that you're trying to affect, but other general social, political, economic, media factors or events. Well, these cards don't score you many points. Also, they do not allow you to play many cards there. Usually it is only one. But the good thing is that then when you score this card, you actually take it, you put it in your play area, and this card will give you a special effect that you can later spend during the game whenever the effect applies. It depends on the type of effect. Different types of events will have different types of effects. For example, here, when you cause civil disorder, which is when you exceeded the maximum allowed amount of influence, you discard the objective to prevent your agent from being terminated. Yes, because if you go over that amount of points, not only do you not win the objective, but also you lose your agent. Your agent is disgraced, your government denies any sort of connection with that agent, and the agent is out of the game. The game continues like this, struggle after struggle, committing your spies, recruiting groups, resolving the effect of the spies to determine who scores, and you continue like this until one of the players has reached a total amount of 100 points. At that point, the player is the winner of the game. As I said, this is a game that has more theme than one would expect, to the point that I'm considering adding it to a class that I'm teaching next year. It is a class about mystery novels and spy fiction in general, and we talk about the representation of actual detective work and actual espionage in fiction. This could be a different way of showing how espionage can be represented in fiction. And in that sense, actually, it has a couple of interesting ideas. It would, for example, help the students realize that true espionage is not about a handsome agent driving an Aston Martin, eating fancy meals, drinking very specific cocktails, and killing the bad guy. It is not about the single hero that saves the day. It is about a net of events. It is about a net of influences, which is extremely delicate, extremely brittle. You're always at danger of not doing enough or doing too much. And it is something you do not do by yourself. Politics is influenced in espionage, as it happens in this game, with the help of groups which may or may not be predictable, which you may or may not control, which may go to the opponent, which may leave you when you need them the most, or they may just overdo it when you would like them to be discreet. And this, I think, it really captures the theme in an interesting way. Not the subtlest one, but based on the declassified information that we have about the nature of espionage and my understanding, I think it is a pretty decent representation of the reality of espionage. Again, from a very broad and abstract perspective, but still the theme is there. What I also like, of course, is the aspect of secret selection of officers that will create all sorts of effects. It's not just about drawing cards and using the effects, even though that is part of the game. It is also about trying to see what the opponent is trying to do, trying to see what the secret agent that the opponent is selecting and responding to that. If I know that you selected a certain agent, then I know that you will play in a certain way. Then I should do certain things based also on what I have and what I think that you think I have selected for that mission. The fact that different spies will specialize in doing different things, again, it gives you this idea of espionage not being done by superheroes, but by a large team of people with different skills, with different abilities, and they need to work together, and you as the invisible, omnipotent director of the CIA or the KGB. You need to figure out the right timing and the right system of interactions to commit the abilities of one rather than the other. Thematically, it makes sense. In terms of gameplay, it really adds a lot of fun, a lot of flavor. When you look like you tried very hard to win a challenge, in reality, you were trying to lose it, and at the end you revealed that you did win the struggle, that you made it look like you and that you happened to lose. That is a big take that moment. People start laughing. It's just fun, that moment of release that you have when your devilish secret schemes that you kept undercover did work and pay off. So it's a bit of a confrontational game. It's a two-player game. It's a challenge game. It's a direct duel game. Each round is pretty much a duel between the two players. So you're trying to kill the agents of the opponent. You're trying to trick the opponent into doing things that are harmful. So definitely there is a level of confrontation. Thematically, the confrontation is all indirect. It's all about intellectuals doing stuff in Iran, or the military or political media groups doing something in other areas of the country. Thematically is an indirect struggle. Psychologically, for the players, it is very, very direct. It is take that game. It is one of those games. So, not for everybody, not necessarily a play with your spouse type of game. It depends. If you don't mind sleeping on the couch, it can be a play with your spouse game. Okay, that was simplifying. There are, of course, many spousal situations. And in certain couples, the acceptance of take that mechanics will be higher than in others. In my family, my wife and I only play cooperative games these days. We just find it is easier and more rewarding that way, and I sleep better at night. CIA versus KGB. The game has been around for a couple of years. The game has been through a couple of editions, so I assume it has been successful, and I think there is a good reason. It is a game that does pack a good amount of theme and, most importantly, fun in a small, very portable package in a system of rules that have a couple of counterintuitive points, but overall are very simple and very easy to pick up, even if you're playing the game with non-players, with non-regular gamers. CIA versus KGB. Good game. I definitely like it, and I'm happy that I required a copy, because I've had fun playing it again after quite a bit, and I can see myself playing it again in the future quite a bit again.